pantry has applied for human services grants, but has not been able to get them because they are a 501c3. In addition, they are a affiliated with a religious organization, although I believe the Essex Jericho Underhill Food Shelf is a 501c3. They have submitted a grant and they have received grants from us in the past, although they are affiliated with a Lutheran church out in Jericho. So
they are an independent organization that operates out of a church.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate that clarification.
It's the space that they have available to use.
Got it. Okay, that's really helpful. That said, I want to make sure that we are able to address the food insecurity in the town. And I want to do so without violating the established criteria we already have for human services grants by requiring the applicants to file within a certain deadline and to be a 501c3 organization. So I'd like to propose that we consider making an equal donation on behalf of the select board to all 3 food shelves in the town. So that's a 3-part proposal I've made: to continue to honor the process of the human services grants, to consider making an award one time to the Essex Westford Emergency Fund, and consider making a contribution one time, an equal contribution to all 3 food shelves in the town. So that's my proposal, and I would like to hear your thoughts.
Elaine, if I may?
Yes, please.
Can you see me?
I cannot. I see a yellow box.
I look yellow.
Now I see your avatar.
Huh. Okay. Anyway, so see if this works. Well, if you can't see me, that's fine. You can hear me.
I can hear you, and that's what's important.
It is. I feel very strongly that a worldwide pandemic is not the time to split hairs about whether or not someone is a 501c3 and whether or not. I think that the need to ensure that our community gets fed is the most valuable thing I can think of that any of these things or places are doing. And I know some woman couldn't find pull-ups the other day and fortunately found some at one of the pantries. And I absolutely agree with you. I really appreciate the way that you've formatted it so that we can allow this doorway to assist. And I think that's a no-brainer all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, so in the applications that we have already pending, there are $26,500 of funding for food insecurity issues, which is an increase of $9,000 from last year for similar organizations. So we're already increasing the amount that we're giving to emergency food organizations. That includes Aunt Dot's, which is getting a $2,000 increase. The Jericho Food Shelf's getting a $1,000 increase. Meals on Wheels is getting a $4,000 increase, and Jump, the Joint Urban Ministry Project, is a new time requester requesting additional $2,000. Feeding Chittenden and Burlington is level funded their requests, so they're getting $5,000. So we're already 18% of our fund is already going to emergency food. Just want to make sure folks are aware of that. That's the request. That doesn't mean that's not necessarily what's been approved, but that's the request. With regard to the 501c3 question, I'm very concerned with only opening it up to one church. If we're going to give money to a church to operate one of their programs, I got to believe that almost every church in the county has a closet with food in it or diapers in it or clothes that people can get in an emergency situation. I don't know why we would open ourselves up to one organization and not open it to everybody. And I think this is a bad and a inappropriate precedent to set. So I'm not in favor, although I do understand the need is great. I'm not in favor of giving funds to a church. It is a program that's operated by a church. It is not an independent. They have bylaws. I agree they have bylaws, and they will tell you that their money doesn't cross borders. But it's a church program, and I don't know how we tell other churches that we're not going to give to them. They may have similar programs as well. I don't know if are we talking about the Heart and Soul yet or no?
Why don't we stick with the food shelf right now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So Andy, I really appreciate your giving us a rundown of all of those food organizations that have applied. None of us have seen any applications. None of us have seen even a list of who's applied. So we are completely in the dark in terms of what food organizations have applied for aid. And so I realize that that's a big gap. And so that may be a reason why you're puzzling over why I'm proposing this. Now that we know that information, that Aunt Dot's and Essex Jericho Underhill food shelves have applied for aid from us this year. Another option would be to either fully fund or increase their ask within the Human Services awards, and then consider the Heavenly Pantry separately. I would be in favor of either approach, but what I would like to achieve is an increase in funding for all of the food service organizations that deal with food insecurity.
I would recommend then doing it through some 501c3. I mean, these food shelves share their resources as well. So surplus could be shared to, in fact, it often does happen. I know it does happen, and I should state that I am loosely affiliated with the Essex Jericho Underhill food shelf. I do their purchasing from the food bank for them, and I get copied on all of their emails, so I know all of everything that they are doing. So I just need to let you know that I'm affiliated with them, and I'm not advocating for them and I'm not having this position because I am affiliated with them. I think it's the 501c3 question. Other organizations in the community have done a similar thing by giving money to the Vermont Food Bank. All of what they call their co-op foods, which they normally charge a fee for the next 2 months, is completely free to all food shelves because of the sponsorship of a large employer in Essex Junction and others, my employer in Essex Junction. And I think that as a way to address the food situation, we could, go in that direction instead of opening the door to I think a poor precedent of not going to somebody that's not a 501c3 and is explicitly a church program.
Andy, to your knowledge, are there any other faith-based food insecurity organizations in Essex?
I don't know. I do know that I do know of churches that have, like I said, a closet that has clothing that has been donated. They have diapers that have been donated. They have, things that people could access. They may, I don't know if they have non-perishable foods available or not. I would imagine some do, but no, I don't know explicitly. I do know explicitly of one. St. Pius Church definitely has a closet with stuff available for emergency situations.
But to your knowledge, there isn't one that any others that have, posted hours where you can come in once a month.
No, it's by request, kind of.
Got it. Annie, what were you going to say?
I had to find my unmute button. Andy, I'm so respectful and grateful that you have so much knowledge and information on history and what you've done, and I greatly respect your point, but it is a worldwide pandemic. I believe that Heavenly Pantry has been going for more than 20 years as a rock solid piece of Essex, and while I appreciate and value every church or every person or everything that has a closet for such things, and it's beautiful, I think Heavenly Pantry stands alone in this regard, in this setting, in the capacity to serve and the continuity of service for such a length of time. And I feel that this would be absolutely irresponsible of us to not do in this setting at this one time during a worldwide pandemic. I don't think that anyone is looking to set a precedent for confusion or for something inappropriate, but for the love of cucumbers, I'm feeding my community.
So Annie, thank you. Pat and then Vince both have comments.
Sorry, waiting for my
that's okay.
camera to. Oh, there it is. Okay. So actually, I think part of the questions I had, Andy answered a bit. Going over, I was wondering what current ask was in the budget for food services, and he went over that in detail. I've tossed the Heavenly Pantry idea back and forth in my head quite a bit since we saw that email come in. I mean, it does seem to me that, I mean, this crosses really like two very well-defined lines in my head, which is the, do everything I can to help, but I'm also, despite my own faith, I am and have always been staunchly against any sort of religion or religious-based, anything in government or governmental purposes. Understanding how widespread and what a unique situation that we're in doesn't stop that necessarily if we have an alternative. If that alternative is just that, if we have an ask that's for 6,000 distributed amongst 3 food pantries that serve our community, then, I mean, we can do 3,000 to the other 2, and the Heavenly Pantry can recommend people who come there to go to the other facilities. I mean, I don't see necessarily why that would be a big ask. And again, the idea of the government giving money to a church organization is an extremely difficult one, even as a practicing Catholic who is very faithful. Religion is strong, but that's a line that I am very, very hesitant to cross as well.
Okay, Vince.
So I agree that the kind of letter of the law here is we shouldn't cross that line. And normally, like if this were, anybody coming to us, I think I would say no personally. If this was a religious organization coming to us, is there a way we can kind of tie this exception to like this state of emergency? So it's not like, so we clarify that this is not normal business. Is that a thing? Like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of speaking out of ignorance here, but I don't know if we can make a clarifying like statement with this. Like this is like a one-time thing because of an emergency, not necessarily the way that we would normally process this kind of stuff. I don't know if the town's in a state of emergency, and we could maybe tie it to that.
I think that's an interesting proposal, Vince. And I'm going to ask Evan to see if he can provide an answer to that in a moment. But I also want to point out to all of you that the Heavenly Pantry is the only food shelf in the village. Aunt Dot's is in the town outside the village. The Essex Jericho Underhill food shelf is in Jericho. And so I want to make sure we're also aware that in terms of our seniors who live in the village center, that's the one they're going to go to. Not that they're not going to go to any others, but do be aware that that is the only one in the village. Annie, you had your hand up, and then I'd like to ask Evan's input.
Yes, you're just to go off your point that it's not a simple situation to have one place that offers food for people who don't have it to say, oh, by the way, during this time that we don't really want you to leave your house and be out in public, we're sorry you came all the way over here, but we'd like to divert you to this other place where there's resources for you. It's already difficult for any human to show up at a food pantry and ask for help. It's absolutely outrageously difficult. And to split hairs right now is more than I can handle. I'm sorry.
I understand, Annie.
Yeah.
I do understand, and I've been in that exact situation myself personally before. I've been the individual showing up at those doors as a 13-year-old. I understand completely where that's coming from. But here we are in this situation. I'm worried about where we are as a town now, yes, but I am also very much aware that when and if we decide to do this, that we're going to also have to start answering harder questions, which is that someone who has a particular faith that is different from that of the Heavenly Pantry is going to say, why are my tax dollars that I'm paying you to the town of Essex going to a church? And that's not a bell we can unring. So yes, this is a unique time of crisis. I understand that. And I still want the money that we have to go to get food out to our community and to our town and to our village. And I believe that absolutely has to happen. But I also think that we need to take and discuss this for more than 5 minutes and understand the gravity of what it means to, as a municipality, consider giving money to a church. You understand? I mean, that's all it is.
Evan, can you weigh in with the concept of a emergency situation? And in your experience, is this something that towns that you have worked with in the past have done? What are your thoughts?
Usually, and Pat is more on the correct side, usually the separation is you don't tend to give money to churches, but certain churches that run food operations, some of them tend to separate the food from the religion. I'm not familiar with Heavenly Pantry's operations and whether they are non-denominational, whether you have to be a member of their church. I don't know anything about their operations. I'd be happy to ask them some questions. They have been turned down in the past. I am told mainly because they do not fit in the guidelines of the grant program as a 501c3. Andy would have to answer from years back.
Yeah, they are aware that that's the reason that they've been turned down, and we've tried to encourage them to apply for a 501c3 for the food, and they've chosen not to. So.
And I'm aware that several people have been members of the pantry and tried to do and work for them. It is a slippery slope because once you give the money, the town has not historically done any oversight over those funds. They have told us what they were going to use it for. We take them at their word. We write them a check. And at the end of the year for next year, we ask them, what did you do? And how many people did you serve? And how many were residents? That's where we are. There are certainly other ways. There's other organizations that could give them funding, but this is a tough part because, I see them. I live right near them. I saw the line the other day, and there are people in need. And so the real question is, can you do it once and never ring the bell again? I mean, other than during a pandemic. I don't know if people can make those distinctions, but you're an elected board. You can do it. You need to be very careful about doing it.
So, Evan, quick question for you: are we as a town in a state of emergency?
We have declared a state of emergency. We've based upon closures and other things.
Okay.
But Annie, you're not going to like this. Our job is governmental functions. We provide police, fire, water, sewer, and other things. We are not as well equipped to do food security. We are doing that through a grant program, and we help where we can. And so that's the line. And I mentioned this last time you all met. We're not set up to do food delivery, food security, things like that. What we do is we do funding for agencies who do that. And then if we're going to start splitting hairs about how they do it, it's going to get awfully difficult for us to administer.
Is there a way, and this is just like a really roundabout way of asking for this, is there a way we could ask one of the 501c3s to take money, buy food that the Heavenly Pantry needs and donate it to them? Is that like a possibility?
That's telling people what to do with their funds, and that's just a workaround, and it's not something I would be comfortable doing. I think the select board just decides what they want to do with some surplus funds to a cap, and then decide if you're willing to take on the slings and arrows of giving to a church organization that has a food pantry.
Andy, do you know off the top of your head what the ask is from Essex Jericho Underhill Food Shelf and from Aunt Dot's in the Human Services grants? And just for the benefit of the public, Andy is aware of these numbers because he is a part of the committee that is determining the awards. The rest of us are not members of that committee, so we don't know those amounts, but Andy does.
So on Dots is asking for $6,000, which is a $2,000 increase from what they requested and got last year. The Essex Jericho Underhill Food Shelf is asking for $3,500, which is a $1,000 increase from what they asked for and received last year. Feeding Chittenden, which is in Burlington, used to be the Burlington Food Shelf, is requesting $5,000, which is the same as what they requested and got last year. The Joint Urban Ministry Project is requesting $2,000. They give out food cards to folks in need, or gift cards. And then Meals on Wheels is asking for $10,000, which is a $4,000 increase from what they requested and received last year.
Okay.
And Meals on Wheels is Age Well. That's the program that Age Well is included in their grant request, their funding request.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Evan.
Just to be clear on some things, over the years, Andy specifically and others, we have really tried to get more applications into the grant program. We have tried to ask people to tell us what they think they need versus what they think they got last year and not ask for more. I think this year quite successful, and maybe at the wrong time to be successful with the ask and the amount of money that we have. But in this list, I didn't memorize the list from last year, but I see some new names and new ask. And the reason why the select board doesn't see these yet is that's not the process. It goes to the committee first, then you get the packet and the request, and we're trying to streamline it so that we can get it out by the after the first meeting in May.
Okay.
So that would be a full month at least a full month before last year and years past.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Annie has indicated she wants to speak, and then Pat. Annie,
Thank you. So I have 2 clarifying questions. One is, I believe, but I'm not sure I'm right, that the applications came in. What was the deadline for the applications again?
February 15th.
Right. So the applications came in long before the worldwide pandemic, not long, but in the new land of time that we're in. The applications came in significantly before we all knew we were going to be in a worldwide pandemic and affected in this way. Because I'd have to say that, late February, we all still weren't really aware the way that we became in the first week of March. So that just affects my thoughts about the awards anyway, because my guess is that any of those requests would be something that they need already, that they would have already needed, and then more some. So that's a little confusing to me to consider. And then Evan said something about standing and receiving the arrows, or what did he say? Whatever that is, I'm down for that. So whatever it is that is difficult for us as a board to make this decision to put food in that food pantry, I am down for that. I will stand in the middle of Essex Center and have every conversation I need to have that is difficult and hard and challenging, if that puts food on the table of the people in the town, everywhere in the town. And I have one more thing.
Yes.
Well, I'll save that. Thank you.
You're saving that, Annie? Okay, Pat, you indicated you wanted to speak.
So that tab that keeps the unmute button disappears and never appears when I need it. The requests that have come in, have there been any requests for additional funding or requests to edit since we've gotten them? I'm just wondering whether or not that was something that anyone has even considered, or since all of this has started happening.
Not from any of the food security organizations, but Spectrum. What do they call it? Spectrum. Youth and Family Services sent in some information about how COVID is affecting them. I was approached by Mark Redmond, who asked if there was anything that could be done, and I suggested that if he had additional information to send it to Elaine. And that's what happened. It has not gone to the committee, largely because it's kind of viewed as late application material. So I'm not sure at this point whether it will be shared or not. Evan's got a comment. Sorry, not my meeting.
Evan?
So, yes, we did get one. We have heard someone else is wanting to ask. The problem is we have set a date, and all of our applicants found that date, did the date. And I know the things on the ground have changed, but if we continue to do that, then we don't have a deadline, and I can't get it out in the time that we need to get it out. And I've said to others, if you want to take the money that's set aside in the grant fund and get it out, we can do that. If you want to create a new pot of money from surplus and decide where it goes, you guys can do that as well. But please don't do one for the other. Let us get the grant money out, take with who gave by our deadline, and if others come after that and ask for more money, you can go get from that other pot, albeit a small pot, to do that. But to be able to get these grants out, there's nearly 30 of them to review and score. I need that committee to be laser focused and make a recommendation back to the select board.
Yeah. Annie, did you have your hand up?
A little bit. I hear Evan, and now that I know the dates, I feel like it's 2 different things, but I still would like to address all of it this evening. But I don't mind how you sort it, Elaine. Thank you.
Let's stay on food security for a moment. Pat, you look like you have a comment.
I mean, more, I think, kind of a follow-up question. I wasn't suggesting that we take edits. I was just wondering if any had come in. But as far as the committee, do we, or rather, like, how quickly can that process be streamlined to get it out the door? I know you were talking May in a select board meeting, potentially approving then, but is there any way to cut down that timetable? Just between Zoom meetings or anything like that, just knowing where we are. Andy, I feel like you just got a worried look.
No. The proposal is to have the committee meet next week. The committee hasn't met since since the applications have come in, and because of all the COVID stuff going on and everything else going on in town business, the applications just came to us this past week. I've been working through all of them. I've got, there are 31 of them. I've got 5 left to review, and I'll be done with my part. But there are 6, 7, or 8 of us on the committee, and we all need to finish our reviews and then have a discussion about it. So the intent is to have it for the first meeting in May. I don't think we can do it before the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, that's really what I was trying to drive to. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. So this has been an excellent discussion, and I appreciate Andy, Pat, and Vince, what you're saying, and Evan, and I am also very torn about the possibility of giving funding to a religious organization. I'm wondering if we can do, I wouldn't say this is a happy medium, but this is a sort of a compromise. How does the board feel about proposing that we increase the funding requests for Aunt Dot's and Essex Jericho Underhill Food Shelf another $2,000 over their full asks, and then see what we can do on a personal level with raising funds for Heavenly Pantry, because we can certainly take care of that as individuals and not as an entity of the municipality. Annie?
I'm also down for I know that Evan had stated about possible projects, volunteer projects for the boards or whatever, and there was discussion of blood drive and whatever. And personally, I'm happy to stand at 81 Main Street in the parking lot by myself, create a large ring around me, and then stand there until there's X amount of donated food that I can then put in a pull wagon and bring over to Heavenly Pantry, because sincerely, I'm disappointed in this conversation.
I'm disappointed too, Annie, but the limitation regarding municipalities being able to provide funding to religious organizations, that's a pretty bright line.
Right, but we have the ability to, in a worldwide pandemic, we have the ability to make a decision here today that is a strong one. We have that ability, correct?
We do have that ability, but we also have the ability to give additional funding to the other 2 food shelves in the town, and we haven't even talked about the emergency fund yet. So sure. I want to figure out what we can do within the law and what we can do that is not violating the separation of church and state. And that's important, even on this very significant issue about food insecurity. So any other board members, how do you feel about the possibility of increasing the 2 asks from the other 2 food shelves that are within the Human Services grant award process? Andy?
I guess should just make it clear that it's not a given that each of those organizations will get their asks. So this is a separate funding you're considering. You're not.
I'm not making a decision for the committee right now. No.
We're not modifying or giving direction to the committee. This
Right.
is a separate donation from some source of fund balance.
Correct.
Okay.
Annie.
Sorry about my dog. If we do make this separate donation, I request that there be some immediacy to it, so that even though I understand Andy's point that the committee has to take the time it needs, I would like something. There are people sitting in their houses right now who don't have food, and it's really making me nervous. Thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, this would be outside of that process, Evan.
I don't know if Sarah's on the line, but if approved, we cut checks on Fridays. So we could probably cut checks on Friday for this.
Okay. All right. Andy.
Just to be clear, many of these food shelves have reserve cash on hand, so it's not like they're not giving out food because they're likely more limited by their volunteers, by their how they're dealing with not exposing their clients or their volunteers to COVID. So it's not. I'm not trying to discourage anybody from making a donation. I'm all for that. It's just that it's not that these organizations are necessarily broke.
Just Evan, Pat had his hand up, and then you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm pretty to the point. Yeah, I'm 100% behind those additional donations.
Okay, Evan.
I was just going to ask Andy a question about gift cards types of things. Is that in any way helpful versus food? I mean, literally, either $25 or $50 cards to the Hannaford's Price Chopper. Does that help in any way, or?
It does help, but it's controversial because it's the question of, are you exposing people to other sources of making them go to a store to expose themselves to a COVID situation. So that's controversial at least among the Jericho food shelf. I've had that conversation pretty extensively over the last week and a half. Having said that, though, they have decided to purchase grocery gift cards to as a backup in case they have more people come than they expect this coming weekend. And so they've chosen to spend their own some of their reserve funds to have those in hand to give to folks if they run out of food. So yes, they very likely would be useful.
Okay, I just wanted to know that because I know that while the pantries have what they have, if you watch the news, it's going to be herky-jerky as to what's available on the shelves.
Right.
So, and that's a technical term, herky-jerky. So.
Vince, do you have any final thoughts on the subject?
Donation to the two food banks that are 501c3s is perfectly acceptable. I mean, I don't know. I'm really torn on this one. I mean, I'm just full disclosure. I'm personally running a fundraiser for the Heavenly Food Pantry, so it's kind of, I don't know. It's hard for me. There's a piece of me that wants to be like, well, hey, if we can get a full accounting of funds from them, what they're spending these funds on, like, what does it matter? As long as we're providing oversight. But it like, I really understand Pat and Andy's point, and it's a hard line to cross.
Yeah.
So I'm personally just going to keep doing what I do as a private citizen. Mm-hmm. And try to do the best that I can for them. But yeah, I'm not gonna be able to support giving taxpayer dollars to a church. And unfortunately, as much as I want to, mm-hmm. I really want to.
Okay. So I have the sense of the board that this is that providing additional funding to the other 2 food shelves in the town is a favorable thing. Before we take any action on that, however, I would like to hear from the public if there's anyone out there before we do any voting. So I'm going to ask us to mute our mics, and we will wait for 45 seconds to see if anybody has something to say. You can text me at 802-324-2546 or get involved in the chat on meetings on Teams.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ken, we can hear you.
I tried speaking earlier, but I failed, unfortunately.
Sorry about that.
I had to switch microphones, but I've got it organized. I have a simple question. I didn't hear it specified, but exactly which fund balance will this be coming out of? Will it be coming out of already allocated fund balance and reallocated, or is it going to be coming out of the 15% unallocated?
This would be coming from our unassigned fund balance.
The 15%.
Correct. Is there another question, Ken, or does anyone else?
No, I guess I would just say I would prefer that that be reserved more extensively, and that a look at the already allocated fund balance be considered first.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so Ken, thank you for your comments, and at this time I'm going to make a motion, and if everyone's in favor of it, we'll move along. I'd like to move that the select board authorize the manager to issue, we haven't discussed a dollar amount. Before I continue with that motion, the $2,000 per shelf was tossed around a little bit in our conversation. Is that a dollar amount that's suitable to board members?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. All right, so I'll make a motion that the select board ask the manager to issue a check for $2,000 to Aunt Dot's Place and to the Essex Jericho Underhill Food Shelf on behalf of the select board to support with their efforts against food insecurity. Would anyone like to second that?
I'll second that.
Any further?
Yes, I have further discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Annie.
So to be clear, the original launch into this conversation was a equal distribution of funds amongst the 3 food pantries that are currently established in our area. In that original conversation, Elaine, may I ask if you had a number that you intended across the board for all 3? Was it 2,000 per?
Yeah.
Okay, so I am dissatisfied without a vote, and I feel that the 3 food pantries should be in conversation now. Is there a way to put that on the table equally and then let me have my hope until the last second?
So are you asking me to amend my motion to say that we give $2,000 to the 3 food shelves in the town?
I am. Thank you for the correct language.
Okay, I'll amend my motion.
You need to get a second for that. She's making a motion to make an amendment. So you need to ask for a second for her motion.
Clarifying question.
Annie?
Clarifying question.
Yes, Annie.
Fear is that if we put it the way I'm asking, what I don't want to do is throw the funding for the 2 food pantries away. I'm just reluctant to have us not even go to vote about the topic of Heavenly Pantry.
So my understanding is when a motion is made and a second has been made to support that motion and a request has been made to amend the initial motion, if it's favorable to the person who made the motion and favorable to the person who seconded, then we can amend. Am I understanding that incorrectly, Andy?
You can do it that way. Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Is Annie's amendment to the motion acceptable to you?
No.
Okay, so then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Puts the blame on me.
Well, I'm trying to follow procedure here.
Yeah, no, but if it had been a motion that wasn't seconded, then a number of us would have not seconded it rather than putting that on. But it's fine. It's fine.
So
we're where we are. It's fine.
So the motion stands, Annie, at $2,000 for 2 food shelves.
Yes, and one more piece of discussion. Andy, it is most likely that my forcible entry of that idea would have caused more disruption to the money that is going to be allocated to the 2 pantries. So I apologize for putting you in that position, and thank you all for this learning experience.
We're learning every time we meet. So we have a motion on the table and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in
yes. Sorry.
Yes,
I just want to say that I agree with you that it should come from the 15%, from the because this is, an emergency situation, and it's
exactly
an appropriate use for that portion of our fund balance. So I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Thank you.
If at some point we find ourselves in dire straits and use up all of our 15%, then we'll have the discussion about reallocating other fund balance.
Exactly. Unassigned comes first. I appreciate that distinction, Andy.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Vince. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your willingness to have this conversation, and I feel it was a very strong thing for the select board to do, to step up in this emergency situation and help where we can. So thank you. So let's turn our attention to the other request on the table, which is the Essex Westford Emergency Fund, which is being put forward by Heart and Soul. And my proposal at the start of the meeting and the discussion was that we consider funding this request in full outside of the Human Services Awards process, because the application came in after the deadline. And again, this is an emergency request, and this would come from fund balance. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Unassigned fund balance. Who's first?
Oh, I'll go.
Annie.
My thoughts are this is an absolute yes. It's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pat or Vince or Andy?
Yeah,
Pat?
I have one. Apologies, Elaine, but can we get a rundown of what they've done so far? I think we have a few members of that organization here, so I'd like to know, and in case anyone who is in the meeting doesn't know what their efforts have been up until this point, I'd love to hear kind of where they are in what they've done the last week or two.
Thank you, Pat. I would like to ask Liz Subin, who is here from Heart and Soul, to step up to the mic.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting us to come tonight. Gabrielle Smith is also here from Heart and Soul of Essex, and really happy just to give you the update. We're thrilled with the generosity of the community that we live in. So let me just go over some bullets. We launched our GoFundMe. We, as the Heart and Soul of Essex, just for anyone who doesn't know, we started as a community engagement initiative in 2012. It was a 2-year deep dive in the community of Essex and Essex Junction to find out what mattered most to the people who live and work here. In that process, we identified 6 core community values, and since that time, we've been working, keeping our nonprofit status and keeping ourselves abreast of what's happening in the community to see where we might have a role in lifting up those values in the community where this good work is happening. So that brings us to Friday. We got a call from the school district saying there are families reaching out. People really need cash, and they can't get anyone to answer the phone. And is there anything you can do? At which point, Heart and Soul, the board got together and said, maybe we can help. And we launched a GoFundMe campaign using our 501c3 status that we got as part of that process. And that was on Friday afternoon, April 10th, with a goal of raising $10,000 for people who needed cash immediately. We reached our goal in less than 24 hours, and we're immediately able to distribute 500 cash grants to 8 families that were given on a first-come, first-served basis. Right now, we're waiting for the money to come from the GoFundMe site into the bank account so we can continue distributions, and that communication has happened with the 32 families that have reached out to us for assistance so far due to the COVID-19 crisis. So as of today, we have raised more than $14,000 through 135 contributions from the community in just 4 days. So anyone listening or watching, thank you so much for the incredible generosity of these communities. It's been unbelievable. Our goal is to continue to raise as much as we can through the end of the month to serve as many families as possible during this time. We have a low barrier application process, which means the family simply needs to tell us how they've been affected by COVID-19. We are documenting all of this on a spreadsheet that is confidential amongst 4 of us. And these stories have been gut-wrenching tales from people who are just terrified. They're scared of losing their income. They're scared of getting sick or getting other people sick. They are frustrated to the point of tears, just trying to get through to unemployment or just trying to get through to a human to hear them. So it's been truly a gift to be able to be on the phone when somebody hears a human and says, "You're going to help me today." It's been an unbelievable thing to be able to do for our community. I will say that we are not a social service agency, and we do not and are not qualified to be in the position of determining need. And we see this as an effort to assist people while they await the longer term support that is that everyone, local, state, federal agencies are working so hard to help these people, help everyone long term as a result of the pandemic. So we would never be in a position. So we see this as a stopgap measure for the end of the month to raise as many funds we can, and then this particular effort of ours will cease. So I think that's it. Unless anyone has any questions, I feel so grateful to be part of this community and these phone calls and the stories. And the relief in the voices of people when we tell them we'll be delivering $500 cash to their doors has just been really incredible. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Liz, can you give some specific examples of what the cash is being used for?
Yeah, well, I can
just without identifying anybody, but is it for utilities? Is it for rent? What are they using it for?
Of course, and I, of course, would never identify anybody. So please, anyone listening, know that this would never be shared with anybody. And what I'm gathering, Elaine, from the stories that I've been hearing is it's mostly for rent, things that they've run out of at food shelves, like diapers, things like just getting food, just your basic need of food and rent and groceries and paying their bills. And really, people are out of cash right now. And so just to have anything, and just to backtrack, this started in the weekend of high holy holidays. It was Passover and it was Easter, and there were some families who wanted an Easter basket, and some people who wanted, there were just people who were desperate to have some normality in their world and some ability to have a little bit of cash in their pockets. And we don't ask too many questions, Elaine. We don't want people to feel like we're asking too much of them, but what they've offered is real assistance with those real issues right now.
And are you finding that these families that are asking for aid is it unemployment that is the problem? And is it more than one person in the household being unemployed?
Yeah, so most of the calls are both parents and mostly their families. Often, or there's been several single parents who are just completely strapped figuring out how to do this as a single parent. And I'm finding that, that all of these things are a struggle for the people I have spoken to, and I just can't tell you how meaningful it's been to the recipients and to get on this list and know that this cash is coming.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Board members, do you have any other questions for Liz? I do have one more. Andy, do you have a question?
I see Annie's hand up.
Annie, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Liz, I was just trying to quickly find, I don't know if you already said it. I did because I already knew it. My head didn't stay with you a little bit there. Do you have the 3 bullet points of what is it that what are the 3 or 4 bullet points that the families must, what are the parameters again for the reach out?
So when they get on the phone, when I just have to ask them, because we're handing out the cash, how they've been affected by COVID-19. They have to either have loss of income, or they have to be caring for somebody with COVID-19, or they themselves are sick from COVID-19. So those are the 3 things that we look at. Yeah, Annie, did you have something else?
No, that's what I was trying to, I wanted to express that outwardly toward the rest of the board, and I couldn't find my words, and that helped me. Thank you. So truly, we're talking about a situation where the people are either deeply affected by the reality that we're all in, or more terrifyingly, literally affected by the virus and the terror and the fear that would come with this unknown beast being in your life and in your home and in your body or in someone else's body that you love. And to me, that's just so, thank you, Liz, for bearing for the weight that you can carry on your shoulders and the hope and love that you can bring to a door. Thank you.
Andy, thanks, Annie. It's really my pleasure.
Andy, did you have any comments or questions?
Yes. Yeah, I got a question. Liz, I don't know, the constituency that's supported here is both Essex and Westford. My question is whether the school board was approached, since they have a common constituency with yours, with the intended recipients. I'm sure the school also has fund balance. Maybe, I don't know if Patrick can comment more, but I'm just wondering if the school board was, because it's the same tax base, right? It's
right, and
it's not Essex tax dollars providing direct funding to Westford residents.
Right. Thanks, Andy. The school board has not been approached separately. The school district is doing an incredible amount of work around getting food to the people who need it. And the child nutrition program, and a lot of that funding is tax dollars. We're paying through our education dollars to have meals provided to that. They are a shout out to food services. They are just doing an incredible thing, and the school district is working with us. In fact, Andy, the reason why this came up is because one of our administrators on the leadership team was recognizing that this was beyond the ask of the school, and was there anything that the community could do to step in while the district was doing all the work that it was doing, so everybody's working to solve this problem, and that's why the school board didn't get a direct ask. The food service is being funded by tax dollars.
Andy, do you have a follow-up?
Not for Liz, no.
Okay. Pat or Vince, did you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions for Liz, but I just want to say that I really appreciate what her and her organization are doing for the community. It's really nice to see.
Thanks, Vince.
Yeah.
Liz, Pat, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So yes, Liz, awesome job. I know how hard you're working, both at this and other meetings that we right, you may or may not be taking in vehicles.
Right back at you, Pat.
Yeah. So the question I did have is a little more serious. So if Essex does fund this, I know that you guys are looking at Essex Westford just because of, it was the school district that approached you. There are going to be some questions that we have to ask ourselves about if we give Essex tax dollars to you as an organization if you're going to give that tax money to Westford residents. There's clearly going to be, again, I don't know if that's something that you've considered or thought about, or if you guys are just on a mission with first come, first serve.
I'm sorry, Pat, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I neglected to tell you that this particular, if you were to give this money to Heart and Soul, this $10,000 would be exclusively for residents of Essex and Essex Junction. It would not be eligible for Westford families. Not that Westford families won't be served, because the GoFundMe dollars are not separated that way. But if we were to get funding from you, it would only go to residents of the town and the village. Thank you, Pat, for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that.
No, I appreciate the clarification. I actually think it's a question I think a lot of people would ask, not wanting to be, hard-hearted about it, but it's a legitimate question that would come back at us. So knowing the answer is fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks.
So Liz, what kind of reporting capacity do you have that you can report if we are to grant this funding? What can you provide us in terms of reporting? How often? What kind of details will we receive to show for our auditors and for the public that this money was spent a certain way?
Yeah, so right now on our spreadsheet, we document the time of the phone, the date and the time of the phone call. We have the name, first and last name of the recipient. We have an email address and a phone number. We have a stamped receipt when the money is the transaction happens. There's a signed document that we collect and the recipient collects for our records. We have those in the spreadsheet that's on our the master sheet, and all of that would be available for you for accounting at the end. We will be able to tell you exactly what families were served. We are delivering directly to their doors, and that's a way of us being able to determine to confirm that they do live in the town or in the village. We're going directly to those doors, partially for that reason. And we'll be able to document every envelope that goes out, where it went, and when it was given, and what time of day it was given. And we'll also be able to document that we actually did do it in the order it was in which it was received, because of that timestamp. Okay. And of course, we would be happy to give you whatever else you need for your records in order to if that doesn't suffice.
And this is under the wing of Heart and Soul, which is a 501c3. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're a private foundation, so 501c3. We're in good standing with the state.
Great. Okay. Andy?
Yeah. Liz, you said cash. So are you physically taking cash, or is it a check in an envelope?
No, it's cash. It's actual cash in an envelope.
Okay. Any concerns with cleanliness?
We are trying to practice social distance, and what we are practicing. So when we call the families, we make a meeting spot we ask them to wear a mask and bring their own pen. We wear masks and bring our own pens, and there's a clipboard that has the envelope with the cash in it. Those are all done and then sterile. We wash our hands before and after that gets done. Okay. We're doing the best we can, and certainly that social distancing and the giving of the envelope is extremely important. We do use we are wearing gloves when we hand those out as well. So we and every family we talk to, we make sure when they come to receive the money that they are following those social distancing guidelines as well.
Okay, thank you.
So, board members, do you have any further discussion about this? I had mentioned at the start of this that we would be, again, using unassigned fund balance for this. The amount being asked for is $10,000. Andy?
I just have a question for staff, I guess, with regard to whether there's any concerns from their viewpoint about the adding a stipulation that the money only go to Essex residents, whether it's a onerous amount of record keeping, or whether we need to do anything with that regard for audit purposes or whatever. And or if there's any concern with it being cash, I guess.
I'll go. As long as they have records, we are not going to want the. We'll have to talk with Liz offline as to what record keeping we would want from our auditors, but I don't want names and addresses in the public record.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I agree.
So I will
Thank
leave.
you,
that-
Evan. And, oh, sorry. Can I just add also that Brad Luck is the chair of our committee too. So if you need, you could reach out to any of our board if you wanted to set up a meeting about what kind of record keeping you would need. You might want to talk to our chair.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will leave that up to Sarah Macy, who's our audit expert.
Okay.
But just we could figure that out secondary. We give out the money to organizations, what they do, whether it's a gift card, whether it's a bag of food, whether it's rent assistance. We're not sure how they're doing it either. So we'll leave that up to the agency. I appreciate all the efforts that they're taking to follow social guidelines, distancing guidelines, and sanitary issues. I would hope that they are also not going alone to do that, because you're carrying a lot of money on you. So with that said, no, I don't have any other issues with that. And I do appreciate that you made the adjustment that the money would stay in Essex and Essex Junction.
Yeah. Sorry. I should have started with that. No.
Thanks for bearing the lead.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, so I just have a quick, I don't know, comment question. I don't really know if it's a comment or a question. It's and this is going to sound really, really, really tone deaf, and I'm very sorry about that, like ahead of time. But so what we're basically talking about here is taking taxpayer dollars, giving them to an organization, and having them redistribute that money, which is, in my view, it's like socialism by proxy through 501c3, which I am totally fine with. But I just want to make sure that that there's no is this like a bad precedent, or is this a precedent that gets set, or is this is this normal? I'm just trying to.
I think the precedent is well established, as our Human Services Grants Program is exactly that. And the United Way is another organization similar.
And I understand turning a grant into a good that serves the community or that serves part of a community. I'm not sure about the whole money part of it, it just being money and not like a service or something else.
I see.
So that was my only concern. That's the only thing I'm concerned about, or I wanted clarification on.
We were elected, so technically it's democratic socialism.
Andy, what was your comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's essentially not much different than a food than us giving a grant to an organization that buys grocery cards and gives them to their folks. But I did want to point out one other difference in this over our Human Service Funding Program. The Human Service Funding Program was approved by the voters.
Right. That's true.
This is just us making this decision, and so it is slightly different from that perspective, that we're taking emergency funds from our rainy day, money from our rainy day fund, and giving it to 20 families in Essex. Right, because if it's $500, $10,000, it's 20 families, right?
Right.
So yeah, Vince, to answer your question, we are doing that. As Evan reported, or commented, we give money to organizations, and then it is up to them to invest that gift in whatever way they do their job. So if it's rent assistance, and if it's groceries or whatever, and if it's in the form of cash for that purpose, that's not our, we have vetted it at this point, and then they have to do their job. I realize that it's a small number of families. We are not the only donor.
Right.
There's a lot of other people out there that have donated, and I wouldn't be surprised if the organization goes to other organizations to seek additional funding. So I think we're just part of a long list of funders.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, if it sounds like the board has a consensus that they're okay with this concept, can you just give me a thumbs up on whether you feel funding the request in full is okay with you? Okay. Andy, do I see a thumb for you?
Yes, Andy put his thumb up. He did.
Got it. Okay. So I appreciate that everybody has, we've had a good discussion on this. Just like we did a few minutes ago, before we move forward into taking action, I'd like to open this up to the public. So I'm going to ask us to mute our mics for 45 seconds while we see if anyone from the public wishes to ask a question. Ken, I see that you have asked to speak. What would you like to ask?
Did I successfully unmute my mic?
Yes, you did.
Hey, wonderful. Well, I think it's great what Heart and Soul is doing. And I would just point out that whether you fund this, well, if you don't fund this, they're not going to go wanting. They have raised $14,000. I think that's amazing. I have a few concerns. These are taxpayer dollars. And from what I read in the application, which did not indicate that it was a $10,000 ask, actually. I'm looking at it now, and I don't see that in there anywhere. But nevertheless, you've indicated it is a $10,000 ask. This is cash. This is cash tax dollars being handed to individuals who have called Liz, and Liz has asked 3 questions of. I don't know if there's any vetting of any sort that's done to know that that cash is spent the way that they indicate that they'd like to spend it. It gives me concern. Why is it not gift cards, for example, where there's some accountability? I think that when we make donations to a food bank and they buy food, we know that that is being used to buy food and hand it out to individuals who need that food. Here, we're handing out $500 bills, I guess, $100 bills or whatever they might be, whatever denomination. And we have no idea how that money is going to be spent. Not only will we have no idea how that money is spent, we will have no idea who received that money. And that gives me pause. I'm a little bit concerned about that lack of transparency. And I don't see in the application that was submitted a very good indication as to exactly how that vetting process, well, actually, it does say how the vetting process goes. They call Liz, and Liz asks them 3 questions. That's it. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about seeing $10,000 be allocated this way. If it was the only money that they would be receiving, I'd have a different feeling about it. But if individuals are comfortable with this process, that's just fine. I'm just concerned that it's tax dollars under these conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Does anyone else have any other, or Andy, do you want to, okay. Anybody else from the public have any other questions? I see a comment from Irene. Irene, do you wish to speak?
Yes, but feel free to read my comment first.
Feel free to make your comment publicly.
Okay. Let me get into chat and I can read that, first of all. In some families, cash may be spent by a powerful person in that family for a substance other than food or rent. I would be wary of giving cash rather than rent directly to their landlord or gift cards to a grocery store directly to them, given the people I've known who've lived in families where there's domestic abuse.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And as a footnote, I would say my father was a pastor of a church near a very busy highway. My father received a lot of in-person requests for handouts. In the days before gift cards, he would drive over to a gas station or a restaurant before he plunked down cash to help needy persons. That way he could report how much was being spent on which services to help those who were down and out. I very much appreciate the overwhelming needs and the generous giving in the Essex community, as well as the work that Heart and Soul is doing right now to help. If a person is considering giving to a charity like Heart and Soul or any other brick and mortar charity in the area, I would hope that they would be able to receive some sort of verification of where exactly that money has gone and that it would not be cash. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Andy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that none of the food shelves that in Essex or the one in Jericho require any evidence of food insecurity. People can go regardless of their situation. So there's no vetting in those situations either. But I do I guess share the concern about cash a little bit, that again, because I'm familiar with the Essex Jericho Underhill food shelf, they also provide emergency aid upon request. And in those cases, it's for things like utilities or for rent or whatever. And again, in those cases, as Irene said, the money goes to goes directly to the vendor, not to the individuals. But I think I don't know. I'm in this case, it's yeah, right. We're giving money to an organization that's then handing it out. We're not handing the cash out, but I guess we're complicit there. But I don't know. I'm comfortable with it, with some reservations, but
Okay.
yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
Mostly wanted to make the comment that the food shelves don't check for need either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see that Gabrielle Smith is in the audience and wishes to make a comment. Gabrielle, do you want to unmute your mic?
Yep, I'm on. Oh, you can even see me. Look at that. So thank you all, Irene and Ken and everyone else that have spoken up with questions about giving people cash. Know that was also something that the board discussed. And the conversation eventually landed on, I think, one, knowing that people have a lot of different pulls on their financial needs right now. There's rent, there's utilities, there's so many, there's personal items, right? There's lots of things that are causing people stress, and they have individual needs around where they need to spend that money. We're also really concerned with wanting to treat our neighbors with respect and with trust. There are no guarantees here, right? We're not asking them for receipts. And we are meeting them when we deliver the money. We've offered to give them checks as well if they prefer. We've gone both. There are options for both. So some people have chosen that. And our primary concern right now is trying to help people who have been experiencing weeks of frustration trying to access services that are understandably overwhelmed in the country and in our state right now. So I share those concerns with the folks on the line as well as the taxpayer. And I really appreciate that everyone's speaking up about this and trying to make the best decision possible. This is really such an unusual time, and we really appreciate that you all on the board are considering supporting this effort, and we know you support it no matter how you're voting. Everyone's been so generous in this community. I just wanted to say that we've considered those things as well on the board, and in making what we believed was the right choice for the fundraiser and for the community. So Thank you all.
Thanks, Gabrielle. I feel comfortable knowing the extent of the bookkeeping that's being done on Heart and Soul's part, and I'm sure that when if the conversation continues with our finance director, Sarah, that Sarah and Liz will ensure that the proper amount of documentation is obtained and that the town will not be harmed by making this contribution.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions or comments from the board? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would like to try.
Okay, Annie.
Andy, will you coach me if I get stuck? It would be easier if you were sitting next to me, but I would like to make a motion that the select board approve a $10,000 donation to the Heart and Soul request for their Essex-oriented
Emergency fund.
emergency fund. Thank you, Andy.
With the stipulation that the funds are spent for Essex and Essex Junction residents.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a second. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you all very, very much. It's important that we
Thank
do
you.
this work.
Thank you all
Thank you
so
all.
much. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Very welcome. We look forward
Yeah.
to hearing the results of your work.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you
will.
for-
And I just have one question. Can I announce that you've done this now, or do I wait for the minutes to be? Can I go for it, right?
You
It's
can go
public.
for it.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your hard
Thank
work.
you.
We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Have a good
Welcome.
evening, everyone.
Thank you
Take
both.
Liz,
care.
Thank you for your
Thank
work,
you.
heart and soul. Thank you.
Liz,
Yeah, thank
you
you.
look
Yes.
like you're in witness relocation with
I
the.
know.
Just want to let you know
I'll
that,
tell you, Annie
like you're in a program. Never
Nope,
mind.
nope. Thank you so much for all your hard work, heart and soul.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. This
Thanks,
is-
everyone.
You can't see me waving goodbye, but I am waving goodbye.
Thank you. Okay, we have one remaining piece of business this evening, approving a resolution regarding Essex COVID-19 response. Evan, is that you that's going to talk to us about this?
Oh, I was hoping
I'll
that
take-
was going to be Greg if he's still in.
I'm still here and I can take this one. Yep. This is Greg. So you talked a lot tonight about what you can do for residents and how you can help out, which is fantastic. The reality is that there's just a lot that you can't do. It's out of your control. It's at the federal level and the state level. So putting a resolution before you tonight, basically took it from Winooski. They had put it together and changed a few words to make it fit for Essex. The trustees approved it earlier today. And it basically goes through, acknowledges that there's a pandemic happening, that there's emergency orders within the state, and that's having a tremendous impact on the community, our residents, and our businesses. And it acknowledges that the town only has a certain capacity to provide relief to residents. There's a lot that you can't do, like I mentioned, and it calls on the legislature to step up and ask them to do some of the things under their control, such as providing tax relief, avoiding tax penalties and interest, foregoing evictions, preventing foreclosures, ensuring that people have health care, continue to have health care in this time, prevents utility shutoffs, and also touches on asking the state to look into the state education fund and how municipalities pay that, since we're the ones that collect the taxes, and leverage any federal dollars that come in through the emergency orders. And it asks the legislature to extend those actions for 60 days after the emergency orders are lifted. So, like I said, there's not a whole lot you can do about those things, but one thing you can do is ask the people who can to consider it and take a look at it. And that's what this resolution is doing. So happy to answer any questions. Hopefully, just reading through it, it comes across as pretty straightforward, but I will answer any questions I can.
And Greg, you said that the trustees have already approved this.
Correct. They did it about 2 hours ago. No, yeah, about 2 hours ago.
Okay. It feels like a no-brainer to me. Any effort that we can, or any additional pressure or recommendations that we can add to the orchestra to get these kinds of protections put through is great. Board members, any questions or comments? Evan?
Board members first, please.
Andy?
I was just going to say, should we tell our newly minted clerk that it's his job to read it aloud into the record?
It's a long one. Do we want to do that online?
Give them a pass.
Yeah, normally
can
I would
try.
say go for it, but it's
Yeah, it is a
it's
long one.
online.
Yeah.
But Vince, it's true. Usually when we have a formal resolution, the clerk reads it aloud into the record, but we can ask Kathy to include it in the minutes or in the record as a formal resolution.
Vince, I got your back here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get you someday, Vince. Don't you
All
worry.
right. You know, I appreciate it.
Evan.
I just wanted to mention that, you know, we talk about what's in our purview, what's on the edge, and what are some of the things we can't do. And we have a charter that says taxes are due on a certain day and a penalty is charged. But there's a reason why a penalty is charged and then interest thereafter. It's because we have to make the school district and the village of Essex Junction whole, right? We collect their taxes for them, we distribute it. If someone doesn't pay us, we actually have to pay a penalty to the state on the unpaid taxes and then try to recoup it back ourselves. That's one of the reasons why we are asking the state to look at that provision as well. I just want people to understand it's not because we want to do something or don't want to do something. Sometimes we are in the middle, and if we have to pay the money and then don't get the money, then we are actually going to tax people more for that loss. And so there's always a push and a pull on certain things. Just want people to understand that's why we want the state to also look at these things, because they're the ones that are also going to cause us issues if they don't release us from that penalty.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, the town holds all of the delinquent tax debt, right?
Yep.
That is correct.
It does. Yeah. Are there any further questions or comments on this resolution? Hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Andy, would you like to do the honors?
Sure. I move that the select board approve a resolution regarding Essex COVID-19 response.
I will second that.
Thank you, Vince. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, the resolution is passed. What remains on the agenda is the reading file and select board comments. Any comments or questions or other thoughts?
Would the comments or questions or other thoughts pertain only to the reading file?
No.
Okay, because I'm still on the Heavenly Pantry issue, and I feel strongly that, you know, there's not much, right? There's a lot that holds us very tightly where we are, right? If I want to talk to Sarah Macy, I may not, and I do not talk to Sarah without going through Evan and Elaine for starters, and taking all the right paths, right? So that was just a look at what it's like, right? So there's not a lot of wiggle room for what we can or cannot do as a select board. It's not the loosest structure there ever was, and it's not cape wearing, Spider-Man crawling kind of stuff. And the work that gets done is so well done by Evan and Greg and Sarah and all the rest of our incredible staff, that we're so fortunate that we live within a structure that functions so well. And I'm so appreciative to be part of Essex and to be on the select board. But I'm saying to us as a select board that this is a moment in time. This is a worldwide pandemic. This is a moment where we can donate some money to an established food shelf in our community. And I feel that we've really dropped the ball, and I'm severely disappointed in us as a board. And I'd like to put that out there and open the floor up for one more discussion, unless this discussion is going to be exactly the same, in which case I will have to leave this frustrated.
Annie, you know, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I was the one that brought this to the board, knowing full well that we are a municipality, and I was asking everybody to make a decision about donating money to a religious organization. So my apologies for putting that sticky situation in your laps. I do still feel the same way regarding the contribution. At this point, I feel bad that you're frustrated, but if I can speak as not as the select board chair, but as a resident, I believe donating individually is an option for every one of us. And Vince has a fundraiser going on Facebook right now that's already raised $1,050 as we speak towards a $2,000 goal. And so what I would like to do is what I can do in my power as an individual to go ahead and encourage other people to make donations so that Heavenly Pantry has the wherewithal to serve the people it needs to serve. That's, I think, the best we can do today.
Yeah. I think we just need to do what we can as private citizens, and it really burns me too, because I'm the real point is that it's the only food shop in the village. Like that's what really gets me, is I'm like, well, for elderly residents who don't drive, people that, maybe don't have cars, it's going to be tough. Yeah.
Annie.
I hear you, and it sounds like. Sorry, I should let people finish. I just asked for the discussion.
Vince, were you done with your comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Annie.
All right, so it sounds like we're still at the same place. I would like to speak to a comment that I see in the meeting chat by a member of the public about point of order already discussed and voted on. This point was not voted on. We did not take a vote on our conversation about Heavenly Pantry. So while I think it's unnecessary to call out a point of order during a worldwide pandemic, and I'm just frustrated. But I appreciate the ability that I have right now to speak strongly, because I haven't always been like this in my life, and I would always just kind of roll with the stuff. And so thank you for letting me be so vocal and be so pushy and absorb it and hear me. And my heart's just really deep about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments from board members? If there aren't any other comments, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn, with many thanks to all of you for taking on this meeting at a very last minute request and for doing the good work we did tonight. You should all be very proud of yourselves. Thank you. Would anyone like to move to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you all very, very much. Have a good evening.
And thank you to all our community members that are working so hard to keep everybody well.
All of you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Evan.
Greg.